So first of all, we'll talk about the body a little bit, as far as, the saying no pain, no gain, right? So we'll talk about some common sense stuff that everybody already knows. But the reason I want to bring this up, because I want it to lead into an account that we see in Scripture that dealt with Moses in a situation Moses was going through. So let's take trying to train yourself to eat differently. Right? When you're used to eating whatever you want to eat and doing your own thing, it becomes a very difficult task to change that up. And a lot of times, most of the time, it seems like we try to do everything at once and so we fail. It's like tonight, we was back there, so I had my eggs, and because I'm trying to stay away from simple carbs for a little while until I kind of cut down where I want to be. So I had the eggs, and I went ahead and ate those sausages that were there. And, tonight they had a stack that high of cinnamon rolls, with frosting on it that tastes really good when you microwave them, And so, I saw those there. And so I just grabbed another handful of sausages, and I'm like just shoving them down, like trying to fill up so I won't be tempted to get those cinnamon rolls. But we can find success if we do little steps at a time, but if we try to do everything at once, it becomes very difficult. And it's a painful process. It's a lot of times because we're so addicted to sugar. It's actually an addiction. Really, honestly, if you eat the typical American diet, I can guarantee you're addicted to sugar. If you don't believe me, try to go without sugar for a week. Because your body starts going through withdrawals, right? And you go through all kinds of horrible feelings. And it even becomes mental. Like your thinking becomes cloudy. You're not thinking clearly, and you have this strong desire. I just want to eat a piece of cake. If I could just grab a candy bar. If I could just, and like, you're fiending, to try to find some kind of relief, But if you get over that hump, and you fight through that, and you discipline yourself enough to get through that, all of a sudden, you start having mental clarity. You start having more energy. You notice you sleep better. And there's all kinds of benefits that come with it. But it costs something at first. And then to maintain it costs something. Because it's real easy to go back on a binge and get back in the habit.
Right.
Now, you can go back on the binge and then pick it back in on Monday. But if you make that immediate choice, right? So my thing, I think I said it in here, whenever I'm a little more strict on certain things that I eat, I'll go on a Jack Donuts binge. I'll go to Jack's Donuts, I'll buy a dozen, and I probably eat 6 to 7 of them, just throughout. I gained like 10 pounds last weekend, just over the weekend, because I was Little Caesar and, donuts, whatever I could get a hold of, because I knew Monday I was going to, try to straighten it back up. Now, that's just me. I know what I'm saying is, it's hard. I get it. But with work, with effort, you can get through it, you can accomplish it, you can conquer it. Physical body with exercise. If you want to build muscle, if you want to build strength, if you want to build elasticity in your tendons, strengthen your bones, it takes consistency. It's pushing your body to a specific limit and then going just a little bit more so that it hurts. That's where they get no pain, no gain. Your muscles actually hurt. You actually tear muscle fibers. Your tendons, you just physically get tired. You get drained. You wear your body down. It takes physical effort. It takes discipline, consistency. But then if you can do that for a while, when your body heals, all of a sudden it can now bear the weight that you were putting on it. So that weight that hurt you before doesn't hurt you anymore. Right? That's the whole thing about exercise and bodybuilding and endurance building and you know, all these people that can run for miles and miles and miles, which I can't. It's because they run a mile and it hurt, and then they ran a mile and a half and it hurt, and you know what I'm saying? So those are some common sense things that I think we all understand what I'm talking about. We don't need a science demonstration on all that. Those are common sense things that we've heard since we've little. But in the spiritual realm, there are things that sometimes come easy because they're supernatural. Because God says, I want this for you, so I'm going to do it for you. I want to bless you. I want to see you prosper. In this particular situation, you've been faithful, so I'm going to do this for you. But sometimes what happens in life, because we're human, when things come easy, they go easy. When things come easy, we don't appreciate it. Many, many times, when God blesses without any effort on our part, many times we mess the blessing up because we don't appreciate it. Because it came so easy, we don't understand the cost. You see, we're so far removed from the crucifixion of Christ that a lot of times we take it for granted. I mean, even reading it in Scripture doesn't even give us the agony of what he actually went through. But if you watch a movie like The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson, when you're done watching that, at least for the next few hours, if not the next whole day, you're thinking totally differently. I mean, I think I told you guys one time, me and my wife went out on a date. It might have been an anniversary. We went out, she took me to, this is going to sound funny, Showbiz Pizza, because we were going to play games, because the movie theater was close to and we were going to watch Passion of the Christ. And so we go into Showbiz, and we're playing games. Well, the token machine was goofed up. It just kept spitting out tokens. So we just play, right? And then we went and saw Passion of the Christ. After I got done seeing that movie, I felt so bad about that, playing with those tokens. And then when we got home, like it was like anniversary night, you know, so we were all in preparation, you know, we were all ready. Like it was even, I was like, I can't even I just saw Jesus get, you know, but after a while, you know, we got over it. But when you see it, right, when you visualize it, when it impacts you, right, we appreciate what he did. We appreciate the blessing. But when it comes easy, sometimes we just don't appreciate it. It doesn't mean that we can't have the blessing back, but it does mean we might have to work for it. So what I'm saying tonight is it's not time to give up when you've messed it up. But God might require a little something more out of you. It may cost you more. But then when you get it back, it'll mean more. Amen. Because you know what you had to go through to get it. So where I want to go is, to begin with, is Exodus 24:12. We're going to read a few scriptures in Exodus. And one thing I want you to remember, I'm just going to kind of throw this in there while we're on this subject, is the scripture does tell us to stand and see the salvation of the Lord, right? And a lot of times we're just like, just stand. And that is scriptural. But there's also another part to the scripture that talks about having done all. Stand. Right? Having done all, stand. Now, we don't want to do too much, because then we start trying to push the door open when God's trying to say it's not time yet. But we don't want to do too little when God says, actually, I need you a couple steps over here before I can open the door, right? But let's look at Moses. This is very interesting. I just heard this talked about today, and I've never heard it like this. I never have heard this before. But it goes to show you the working of God. Exodus 24:12 says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Come up to me on the mountain and be there, and I will give you tablets of stone, and the law and commandments which I have written, that you may teach them.'" He says, "Come up here with me, and I will give you the tablets of stone that I have written on. And all I want you to do is take it and teach it." Go to Exodus 31:18. There's a lot of chapters here on this account. 31:18 says this, "And when he made an end of speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone, written with the finger of God." Again, I want to point out, he gave Moses 2 tablets of stone. All right? Now let's look at 32:16. 32:16. "Now the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets." So it's very clear here, God is trying to establish a covenant, and he wants to use Moses to teach the covenant to the people. All he required of Moses was to be with him. God did the rest. He just said, "Come here with me, and I'm going to give you the tablets that I have written upon. I just want you to take it and teach it." The work of God. The tablets were the work of God. Now something happened with these tablets. Most of us probably know. But the children of Israel, while he was away, began to get in their flesh, begin to become carnal, begin to lose hope, begin to kind of get back into their old mindset that they had in Egypt. And they, a lot of times when people get stressed out, like they started worrying about Moses. Like, we've lost our leader. He's gone. I don't know what happened to him. So they get into this manic state, if you will. I imagine out of that many people, some of them were probably facing some kind of psychosis, right? Some kind of neurotic behavior, and they had to have something to hold on to because they were freaking out. And it's like, well, let's make a calf, right? Let's make something that we can worship. Well, where did they get that? Well, they got that idea from their old ways, because they came out of Egypt, a land that had many idols. Land that had many gods. So they went back to mentally practicing the customs of their old life. Many times that's what we do. When God is trying to give us something, God is trying to give us the tablets and say, all I want you to do is take my word and use it. A lot of us, when we face stress, when we face uncomfortable situations, like tonight, when, I've been trying to stay away from carbs all day, and I saw those rolls, it's like, you just want to go back to your old ways. You just have to stop and think and breathe. That's our big thing in school. Stop, think, breathe. All right? But that's what happens. They get stressed. So what am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to go back to my old ways. My old ways never got me anywhere, but they gave me relief in the moment. Sin is pleasurable for a season. Sin is pleasurable for a moment. But then after sin is conceived, comes the guilt, the shame, the conviction, the condemnation, and death. Death to whatever God was trying to do in that moment. You abort whatever God was doing in that moment. It's not that it can't be fixed, it's not that it can't be turned around, but in that moment, We revert back to our old ways. So, the children of Israel revert back to their old ways. Let's worship a calf. Let's practice this. And then they get into this frenzy. This manic frenzy of just this carnal hysteria, if you will. And then they just start having this big orgy. Now, I don't know where that came from. I don't know if that's what they did in Egypt or not. I haven't done all the history. But for some reason, they just thought, hey, let's just let all ambitions go. Let's just kind of party. Moses comes down after having an experience with God. And he sees all this activity. Knowing what he had worked so hard for to get them to this point. Knowing that he was in the desert raising his father-in-law's flock. Experienced the burning bush. Had to face Pharaoh. Had to go through all this stuff. Put his neck on the line. So he can get these people out of there. And then they just revert back to the old ways. He was ticked. He was mad. So guess what he did? He took the work of God that God gave him, threw it down. In that moment, I understand his frustration, but symbolically, what he did in that moment is say, I'm throwing down what God has done in my life, and I'm going to take care of the situation in my own hands. I'm throwing the things of God, and I'm going to deal with it myself. Out of his frustration, out of his anger, he didn't take that moment to stop, think, breathe. He took the work of God that God gave him, and he threw it down, and it broke. So then he starts dealing with the situation. Now, there's a time and a space where God kind of gets back into the picture. Moses starts listening to God. Okay, now we've got a mess going on. What are we going to do about it? God says, hey, look, man, this, we're going to have to work together on this thing. And so they kind of start straightening the situation out. But what about the work that God really wanted done? The work that he gave Moses, and Moses just cast it aside. Well, see, God wasn't finished yet. God wasn't finished with Moses, and God wasn't finished with the work. Because remember, it was God's work written with God's hand. He wasn't finished yet. So what happens? Well, now let's look at Exodus 34. Number 1. And the Lord said to Moses, this is where it's interesting. The Lord said to Moses, cut 2 tablets of stone. Now see, earlier he said the Lord gave him 2 tablets. Now the Lord's looking at him and said, you cut 2 tablets of stone. You see, he's saying, I'm not done with the work I want to accomplish. And I'm not done with the work that I want to accomplish through you. But you're going to have some skin in the game now. I tried to do it for you. I tried to do it the easy way. I tried to give you a blessing. But you took advantage of the blessing because it didn't cost you enough. But I'm not done with you. But you're going to earn it. You cut 2 tablets of stone. Like the first ones. It's going to look the same. It's going to be formed the same. It's going to be the same thing. It's just you're going to work for it this time. The good news is going to be the same thing. The bad news is you gonna work for it. Cut 2 tablets of stone, like the first ones. And then catch this. And I will write on these tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Now this is where it's awesome. He says, I want you to work for it. I want you to cut the stones. I want them to look like the last stones. I want them to form just like the last stones, because what I want to accomplish is going to be accomplished, and I'm going to accomplish it through you. But you're going to work for it. And when you have them, then I will write upon them the exact same words that I wrote on the first ones. Because here's something so cool about this. His word cannot be replicated by human thinking. His word is always and forever. His word is not diminished. It's not perverted. It's not twisted. It doesn't change. His word is always his word. So he tells Moses, you're going to work for it, but the word is mine. And the word's always going to be mine. And if you'll cut those stones out, I'll finish what I started in you by my word. See, that's powerful. I told you, you can take it down. The bad news is you might have to work for it. But the good news is God says, if you work for it, I'll do it. And not only will I just do it, I'll do it the way I intended on it being done from the very beginning. So when all was said and done and accomplished, we got the 10 Commandments. We got the law of God. Everything that God intended in the very beginning was established. There was just a gap of carnality in there. It happens to us all the time. So tonight, I bring this to you to say 2 things. One, if you've had a gap of carnality, don't lose hope. Just be ready to work. You're going to have some skin in the game. You're going to have to put some sweat into it. But if you don't lose heart, you don't wear out. Right? The race is for those that endure till the end. Right? The other point I want to make is this. If you haven't experienced your gap, or you've already experienced it and made it through, and you're looking forward to that next blessing or that next move or that next word from God, remember, don't let your flesh get in the way. Don't let your anger strip you of God's blessing. Don't let your depression strip you of God's blessing. Don't let your anxiety strip you of God's blessing. Oh yeah, sure, you may get angry. Sure, you may have some depression. Sure, you may get anxious. But don't let that stop you. Don't have an act of carnality in the middle of that causes you to abort what God's trying to do. Because it's not that He won't do it in you eventually. It's just I think we all in here would rather have it the easy way. Rather than have to work so hard for it. Because there's so many other things in life we have to work hard for. So if we knew we had that opportunity to carry out the blessing of the Lord and not have to work so hard for it, because that wasn't His intention at the time. Look, faith without works is dead. I get it. You see, in the beginning, Moses' part was, come be with me. That's all the Lord asked. That's all God said. Come be with me. Come sit at my feet. Right? We've been talking about that. Mary and Martha, just come sit at my feet. That's all God wanted from Moses, his relationship. And then God gave him what he needed for the work. So I don't know where we're all at here tonight, in your relationship or in your what you feel is your calling or your purpose. But take note tonight that God wants us to understand. Some of you maybe you are working for it right now because you've already messed it up. Take heart because it's coming. Once you get those stones all chipped out of there, you can say, here, God, I did it. May you find it pleasing. And then he'll take his finger and he'll write his word so that you can move forward with his word. But if you're in that stage where he just says, hey, come here, come to me, I want to give you some. Cherish it, guard it, protect it. Paul told Timothy, guard the gift that you've been given. And I'll say this as I kind of wrap this portion up and ask for comments and questions. But I remember, I forget if Pastor Tyner actually gave us all plastic coins or something, or if he just said it and it just stuck with me so well. But he said, think about this. If Jesus was right here, right now, like in body form, we see God, and he approached you, and he handed you a coin. Let's face it, it can be a piece of string. You know what I mean? It don't matter what. If Jesus handed you something, placed it in your hands, I would never leave you. I know I thought, man, that's like going to be in my pocket every day. I put it to my underwear at night while I'm sleeping. I'm not going to lose that thing. Think about how precious that would be. That's precious. And we can relate to that because we relate to tangible things. But you want to know the honest truth? And you know where I'm going with this. He has given every one of us. He's given us that coin, that string, that he has given it to us. It's just because it was a tangible we place in our hands, sometimes we don't think about it, we overlook it. But he's given us a purpose, a cause, a gift, a reason to live. And it's a blessing.
What happened?
So what is that gift? What is that coin he gave you? What is that thing that we should be treasuring every day of our lives? And never want to lose it. And never want to tarnish it. What is it? Because once you find it, once you discover it, once it's revealed to you, once you walk in it, it'll be the most precious thing in your life. And you'll be able to say, like I think it was Peter, didn't he? Peter, hey, silver and gold, I ain't even worried about it. But I've got something that's worth even more. I think everybody in this room could say that. What I have is worth more than anything you could ever imagine or think, or want or desire. But first you have to feel that way about it before you can give it to somebody else. Brother Larry, I know you've been waiting.
When you started out earlier, God made the stones. He'd written on them. All he had to do was bring them back down and now, I don't know if you'll get this or not, but it come to mind to me. Go back in Genesis at the beginning, in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve are there. God supplied everything.
Everything.
They don't do a thing.
Gave
Just
us
survive
a
there.
blessing.
And speak to the Lord, talk to Him. That's all they had to do.
Yeah.
But when they committed the sin, then all that was wiped away.
Yeah.
Because that's when women had to start bearing children.
Yeah.
And man had to start working
Yeah.
to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
So there is a similarity there.
Absolutely.
It started in the beginning.
And here's the thing. So when we look at Adam and Jesus, okay, the terminology is this: the first Adam, the second Adam. The first Adam had everything handed to him. Didn't have to work. Took advantage of the situation. Didn't appreciate it as much. There was no sweat involved. No blood involved. Second Adam had to pay the price. You see, the second Adam was the second set of stones. Our salvation, our Garden of Eden, heaven, it had to be worked for now. Because through carnality, it threw it away. But through the blood and the sweat and the pain and the anguish of God manifested in the flesh, He carved out the tablets in stone and offered a sacrifice. And the finger of God established His word. And the end result is a replication of His intention in the first place. You see, He didn't give up when Adam fell. It just had to take a little more work. His word is forever. Our paradise will still be established. You just have to work it. See what I'm saying? Great example. Perfect example. It takes that moments of Moses that lasted between here and here, and it just extended it from the beginning of time to the end of time. Perfect description of what we're talking about tonight. A perfect place to dwell for God's creation. Messed up by carnality. God said, I'll take care of it, but you're going to work for it. But I'm going to establish my word. And I'm going to establish a new heaven, a new earth, where you can dwell with me forever. So I'm going to fulfill, God says, I'm going to fulfill my intention for my creation. Because my word is forever. Did you have something back there?
Well, mentioning the beautiful garden for Adam and Eve, where we are started from. In my mind, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but feedback would be great. I feel like when God told them not to eat the fruit, I don't know if you're a football player, if you like football, but I think it was kind of like a strategy. He knew what they were going to do. So it was a strategy, knowing that the serpent was already listening by saying, don't eat it. And what do?
Right.
They eat it because they're kids. Right. They're growing up. They're sons and daughters of God. Adam was formed by God, so he would be his creation. And then there too. So for me, I feel like God set that stage up. He knew what he was doing. He wanted them. He knew what they were going to do. But through Adam, we have Jesus, which then we go up there on the mountain where Jesus is with the serpent, and he's hungry, and he's like, man, you're the son of God, throw yourself from this thing.
Yeah.
He had a choice.
Yeah.
We all have a choice.
Amen.
And it's if we're going to have our choice to have faith in God, even though it gets tough and we're starving, and it looks good on the other side, are we going to be obedient to God? Are we going to ride out the storm? We're going to, because whenever God tells us to do something, his word will not return void.
Right.
And if he told us to get to the other side, guess what?
You're going to the other
We're
side.
going to get to the other side.
Right.
It depends.
Right.
It depends on
Right.
what mindset, what attitude
Right.
that we are going to allow ourselves to project through that circumstance.
Right.
So,
And I think you make a great point there, because when we're faithful to God, we have faith that God will fulfill his word. So when he says we're going to the other side, we know we're going to get to the other side if we just stay in the boat. It's a matter of staying in the boat. The boat is going to the other side. Now, do you want to enjoy the ride? Or do you want to be scared of the storms? I mean, that's where we're at. Because the waves are going to ride. Life's going to happen. What kind of ride do we want? Do we want to be freaking out all the time? Now, if you stay in the boat, you're going to make it. So you can be freaking out all the time and ride the whole way. Because you stayed in the boat. But is that the life you want? Or do you want peace, patience, joy? You want to be able to go, it's okay. It's okay.
But he says you will have tribulation.
Exactly.
But I will be with you always, even to the end of the world.
Exactly.
Now, he'll always be there.
Yeah.
You're going to have to work now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is a penalty, not a penalty, there's a price to pay. Because the world itself is against us. But God's for us. So if he's
Right.
for us,
Who could be against
who's
us?
going to
Right.
be against us?
Exactly.
and we
Exactly.
got to keep that word every time a
Yeah.
trial, tribulation, or a bill, or a family member, or heartache, or
Right.
trial, or work, whatever comes at us, and we got to grab hold of that word.
Right.
We got to get that food down in our system until we're squeezed in
Right.
the pressure cooker, that the only thing that's coming out of us is the word of God, and
Right.
not fear and doubt, confusion.
Well, and one thing we've talked about in here is, actually, there are times when we need to just audibly speak his word.
Amen.
If we're the only one around. There are times. Now, I do it all the time. I mean, I'm not into like conjuring up God. But there are times too that we need to speak some things, and we need to say some things, and be careful what proceeds from our mouth, because life and death is in the tongue, it's in the words we say. But what happens is there is a mental response to words. And that mental aspect of who we are feeds the spirit, or it drains the spirit. So when we're speaking faith, when we're speaking the promise, when we're speaking the word, we hear it. We hear it. Faith comes by hearing. There's a reason for that. Because our brains are created to receive that audio. And it goes into this creation. And it fires up neurons and everything, and it gets transmitted in there. And it affects and it feeds our spirit, which is the innermost part of who we are. And that's what gives us drive to keep pressing on.
I just want to add one thing.
Oh, no.
Okay, as I was spending time with the Lord, there has been some things that I've been waiting on the Lord to bring to
That's what I
pass.
do every
It's
day.
been, some things, like you said, is quick, it's overnight, instantaneously. Some things he's like, you know what, I want to show you you're stronger than what you give yourself credit for.
Sure.
And as you walk through this, mountain or valley or destination or whatever,
Yeah.
if you keep your focus on Him. So today, as I was with the Lord, I wanted to pray for some situations, and He says, you don't even have to pray, just receive.
Yeah.
So if we just say, you know what, you're in the boat. Oh my God, I'm in the boat. Oh my God, there's storm. Or we can sit there and say, I'm going to the other side. I'm going to make it.
Right.
And sometimes we have to be our own coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's all kinds of scripture that talk about strengthening yourself in the Lord, right? And the joy of the Lord is our strength. And she's exactly right. You're in the boat. The storm's happening. You can either freak out, or you can say, I'm going to the other side. Same situation, same circumstance, everything's the same. You're the one that determines how if you enjoy the journey or you don't, right? It's all a journey. It's all a journey. And then when that day comes, we're all out of here, then we can rest. Then we've made it. And the ultimate goal in my life, talking about setting goals, this, that, and the other. I don't so much set goals, I just try to grow all the time. I just want to grow. As long as I'm growing, I'm going to meet goals. But my ultimate goal is to hear, you've been a good and faithful servant.
Amen.
That's it. Man, dude, you hear those words? I mean, seriously, think about it. We're going to dismiss it. Think about that. It's kind of like what I told you, that gift that Jesus gives you. Stop. Let's stop for just a second and think about that. When God says to you, good job. You've been faithful. I mean, with all the worry and fret, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing enough? God, do you really, I shouldn't have thought about that. Man, now I'm really wanting to do this, but I know I shouldn't do that. But I want to, and all this that we go through trying to keep ourselves straight sometimes. But then after all that, to finally, that one day, to have Him look at you and go, you've done a good job. You've been a good and faithful servant. That's powerful. And if you can ever, do it daily, do it 3 times a day, do it every week, I don't know. But, you do your thing. But stop yourself sometimes. Just do it on purpose. Whenever everything kind of gets, stop. It may be 30 seconds. It may be 60. Whatever. Stop. And breathe.
Resist.
And think about Him saying, you've done a good job. And now I'll make you feel better. And I'll give you some energy to keep going. Right? Do it. Like I'm serious when I just saying about it, talking about it. Do it. Do it. Start doing that. Just think about it. Think about that gift. I think about that sometimes. That example I gave you. Ever since I heard Pastor Time say that, I think about that sometimes. How precious the gift is that He's given me. It's not mine to keep and to take advantage of, like the person with the 1 talent that went and hid it. It's mine to keep and nurture and to use to give to everybody else. Anyway, so we could go on there because that's good stuff too. Because the more you give to God, the more God gives you to give.
That breathing,
Yeah.
you're right, because dealing with Sarah and not getting so much support. The last 2 days, she is at lunch, it's just been blah, 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 blah. Just, Mom, my head is killing me. And I had got to the point, I just had to stop
Yeah.
answering her
Yeah.
repetitively
Right.
and just breathe.
Yeah.
And I kept telling her, Sarah, it's going to be okay. They're going to figure this out. It's going to be okay.
Right.
And she goes, you just don't understand. And I go, I don't. I have never had those. I don't. But I can see it in your eyes. And so yesterday when I got in, she was in the kitchen. And Robert was in the back, and I go, don't leave. And he goes, you just got home. I go, we need to talk. So we went and we talked, and he was just oblivious to everything that was going on with her.
He's a man.
No, this is. So I go, he goes, well, you know, it happens when, and I go, this has been happening for 2 years.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
Yeah.
And he was like,
You know we're recording this, don't you? Your son's gonna see all this. He's gonna tell his dad.
and he goes, I've been right here.
Yeah.
And I go, I'm taking her to the med center because she's got to get something.
Yeah.
And at least to get her through till
Sure.
we actually see. He goes, so you've already made up your mind what you're doing? And I go, yeah, pretty much. We'll be back.
Well, you just said you didn't see it. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. That's getting nervous.
I'm like, oh.
No, but yeah, no. And anyways, yeah, we talk. But you're right. We need to be conscious of, again, that's, I don't know. Evidently you guys don't get tired of it because you keep coming back. But the spirit, soul, body. I mean, it all goes together, you know. And what happens in our body affects our spirit, affects our minds affect our spirit. I mean, you know, it all goes together. God wants to do a work in you, but if He doesn't have a clear pathway, He can't speak because you can't hear Him. You know, you got to keep that pathway clear.
I had to, even because of being at work for longer than I had home, I found the screensaver, life and death is in the tongue, and I put it up on my computer to where I could remind myself before I speak and word off something.
Right. Yeah, God kind of reminded me of that a little bit today too. I was driving a car and I was like, I just had that moment. I was like, yeah, okay, God, I get it. Okay, you know, like, don't make me feel too bad about it. I get it. Where, you know, there's certain situations, like with my son, maybe he's trying to work, but when I don't control myself, or control the words that I say to him, or control how I conduct those words, I can be like Moses throwing his tablets. You know what I mean? That's how God kind of related that to me, because he might be trying to do the work, but when I get involved in an improper way, then I mess it all up. And it's not that it won't eventually get done, it's just it's going to take longer, and it's going to be harder on me. Because he's going to say, okay, you don't want it the easy way, then you chip the stones out. I don't want to be chipping. And I don't know, I hope I haven't got to that point yet. I don't know if I have or not, but we're still fighting, we're still pushing.